Hello and welcome to Speech 110, Intro to Human Communication. Today we're going to talk about persuasive speeches. Now we've got the informative speech in the rearview mirror. We're going to pick up what we've learned from there and move forward confidently into the breach with discussion today about persuasive speeches. And we'll find as we go forward here, persuasive speeches are a little bit more complex than the informative speech. So let's first talk about some general feedback. Now, I spent a fair amount of time on giving you guys speech feedback on your informatives. So I wanted to kind of summarize again for everybody, because I think this will touch all the bases for everybody who turned in a speech. First of all, I'd say I thought you guys did a really nice job. And a lot of you guys learned some things about how to give a speech the proper way. So we're going to build on that here with our persuasive speeches, and I have no doubt every single one of you will do much better. So here are a few points I want to say. First and foremost, I can't say this enough. Remember the picture of the house we had in the last video? Foundationally, your speech is only as good as your outline. So remember now, look again at your outline. Some of you guys took a hall pass on writing full sentences. You want to write every single thing out. Even though you may not say it, and of course we're not looking for you to say it exactly that way, but what it does is it sets the foundation for what you might say. But your initial outline, your non-speaking outline, the first outline needs to be written out in full sentences, including transitions. Sources are written out the way you would say them with the ADT method, right? Author, date, and title. Keep your feet and hands quiet. It's the thing I wanted to mention to you guys as well. Some of you guys were just kind of bouncing around up there involuntarily. So what we're looking for here is purposeful movement. The other piece here is the visual aids and using those effectively. Now you're only required to have one here. I would say some of the better speeches use a few different visual aids, but one would satisfy the requirement here for this speech as well. But you want to actually maybe move with the change in aids if you can. So I know it's a bit more challenging, obviously, if we're recording this at home or whatever, but there's a couple ways to get around that. If you can hook up your laptop to the TV and project, that's what some of you guys did. Worst case, have a stand up there if you want to have some pictures displayed. You can do that as well. Or you can have an assistant from the audience display your visual aids if you wish. All of those are viable options here. Certainly not a good idea to not have any visual aids to support your speech, because a lot of times, as we know, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Also, you want to make sure the picture is appropriate to the message. Some of you guys did a great job with that. Others maybe chose some visual aids that weren't on point as well as they could be. Don't read your content word for word. That's the whole point of this class, is to speak extemporaneously. So I'm going to encourage you guys to get your speaking outline down, right? And then practice. Building note cards from that basic outline will help you a lot, I think. And what I do typically is once I've got my speaking outline, I just put keywords onto slides, and I use that as a way of diving around like I'm doing now. Frankly, I've got these here, and I'm totally riffing off these bullet points. Watch those fillers. Now, I myself use them sometimes as well. It's not always easy to do that. Now, if you say and ah every third sentence, that's going to be a problem. If you say it once in a while, sparingly, that is okay. I would say just try to be okay with those pauses and catch yourself saying and ah before you say it. One thing I would say is work on having better transitions. Every one of you, to a fault, probably could have done a better job, I would say there. Just saying, and now I'm going to talk about this next thing is not as clever or as intelligent. And now that we're going to be talking about persuasion, it's vitally important for you to make those strong connections there and to hold interest throughout the course of your speech. Verbal citations, a lot of you guys kind of missed the boat there a little bit, I would say. Again, using the ADT method, citing things out as they're going to be said. So make sure you list all the information about the article you're citing in your speech. And finally, watch your timing. Some of you guys went a bit long. We have 5 to 7 minutes here. It's important for you guys to practice so that you hit those, somewhere in between there. If you go a little long, obviously with 30 seconds over 7 minutes, that's fine. A couple of minutes is going to be a problem for your grade. Same thing for a short-end speech. Now, most of you guys hit right in the middle, so that was great. So timing was good as well. Those are my general pieces of feedback. I thought, again, you guys did a really nice job. Keep your confidence level up. Obviously, we're recording this, but you want to make sure you practice. I would say that's the key there. All right, so let's cleanse the palate here and start talking about persuasion. So chapter 16 kind of goes through this, but I'm going to give you kind of a quick, down and dirty Mike Bedker version of these things. A couple things here. Obviously, just like the informative suite, you've got the persuasive outline, which is due on the 13th of Tuesday next week. And same thing with your speech. Both are due on Tuesday next week. So really what we're doing here is, instead of just informing the audience, we're now learning how to persuade your audience to take action. A couple points on the persuasive outline, which again is the foundation for your speech. It's worth 100 points. You'll need to apply one of the following organizational patterns, which I'll walk you through. Problem solution is probably the easiest one to do, or problem cause solution. So problem solution or problem cause solution, and or a statement of reason or topical. So there's two. We'll go through those here. I'll show you guys these. Important point, the number of main arguments should correspond with the organizational pattern you select. And again, you can always look at your book as well for some of these patterns here. But I would say the easiest way to go is to pick problem, cause, solution, or problem, solution as a baseline for your organizational pattern. You must incorporate counter arguments. So what is that? A counter argument is something that somebody might say who disagrees with you. So what you want to do is kind of understand both sides. For example, when I'm looking at politics, I look at all sources of information that are credible to get a better view of both points. Now, you still have your opinion and your point of persuasion, but it's important to know what that counter argument might be, and then try to find facts to offset that or to overcome that counter argument. So you're required to have a counter argument within your speech. Your message must incorporate at least 5 outside sources. So same as before, but now this time we had 3 last time, we have 5 this time. And you'll want to do an annotated bibliography as well, which essentially is saying, here's the article in APA format, and then 5 sentences, 3 to 5 sentences roughly explaining kind of what's the gist of the article or source. Follow the outline format provided. So you look at that again. Some of you guys kind of had your own versions of that. I would say stick to the facts, stick to the book, examples provided in class. And then look at if all else fails, look at the persuasive outline template and persuasive outline rubric for additional details. So you're looking at, again, specifically now the rubric and how I'm going to grade this to make sure you're hitting all the cylinders. Okay, so you got a fair amount of time here. You've got Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then of course it's due on Tuesday at midnight. So you've got some time here. It's going to require some focus and effort, and it starts with research. Your speech, of course, now once you've got your outline done, is due again on the 13th as well, and that's 5 to 7 minutes. So the informative was 4 to 6. This is 5 to 7 minutes. All sources must be cited when delivering your speech, so you've got to go out there and say it. Now, you've seen enough examples of that. I think you know what I'm looking for there. Don't just glance at or mention precursorily. You want to say, ADT, basically. A presentation aid is required for this assignment. I would say it's smart to probably add a couple different ones here, especially if you're making a couple different points. Each main point could have a visual aid to support it, whether it's a chart, a graph, an image, or whatever. This message must align with your persuasive speech outline. So in other words, your outline and your speech must be simpatico, must be identical. So you can't make one outline and then give something completely different for your speech. That will not wash. Please see Persuasive Speech rubric for additional details. Again, look at the rubric, which is supplied to you guys, to make sure you're hitting on all the cylinders, okay, with your speech. Again, both are due the 13th. Okay, so let's talk about persuasion a little bit here. Really what it is creating, reinforcing, and changing people's beliefs or actions. Okay, so you see this a lot in politics here. One thing I wanted to share with you on this picture here is Trump is call to action, right? He wants you to go to Trump, to text Trump to 88022 to make America great again. So you'll see this a lot. Again, the call to action. Once you persuade your audience, tell them where to go. So last night I sent you guys a link to an article. If you're struggling with selecting a topic, this article is great. Obviously gives you a lot of different ideas. What you want to do is obviously do your research first. Here are 3 points the article talks about. So 3 tips I want to share with you guys from the article. Do your research. Foundationally, I can't stress this largely enough. You want to make sure you are prepared and know all the angles. So know both sides of the story before you go in there and try to persuade somebody one way or another. And then finally, know your audience. All right, so let's talk a bit about ethics and persuasion. This is in Chapter 2. Goals must be ethically sound. So make sure that you're positioning something that is ethically sound, okay? And I'm not going to read into this too much here, but goals must be defendable, and you got to do your research. Like I had a student give a speech last year about maintaining the same minimum wage, which is interesting. Certainly one that you have to do your research on, right? So this person did not do their research and made a list of different things that were not defendable. So you've got to make sure if you're going to make that kind of a statement, you've got to be able to have the facts to back it up and why it's a good thing. I do know a fair amount of things about a lot of things, so know that I will challenge you if you use a source that's not credible. We'll talk about effective emotional appeal in this as well, and that's chapter 17, so look into that chapter as well. Persuasive speeches are more ambitious, therefore more challenging, so know that this is not just a simple informative speech, right? We've got to use emotional appeal. Persuasive speeches have three different ways to get through this, all right? So you've got to present the facts, right? So questions of fact are either right or wrong and can be answered absolutely. So that's one way to approach your speech with regard to facts. Lots of folks like to use this idea or questions of value, and which is more abstract, right? About the worth, rightness, or morality, and so on and so forth of an idea or action. So that's a little bit more squishy, but still can use facts as a part of that value proposition. And finally, you see this a lot in politics, questions of policy, a question about whether a specific course of action should be or should not be taken. So let's look at each of these here. Question of fact, first and foremost, deals with the truth or falsity of assertion. Stephen Colbert, one of my favorites, invented a word called truthiness, which is kind of funny, which is varying degrees of truth. So we're going to be dealing with that here, of course. A lot of times it's a partisan approach, which means basically how you're on one side or the other of an aisle, and it's organized topically. One good example, too, is the JFK assassination. Was it a conspiracy or a lone gunman? I have my theories on that as well, but that'd be a great example of a question of fact. So here's a good example of a question of fact. Central idea: there are 3 good reasons to believe that an earthquake of 9.0 or above on the Richter scale will hit California in the next 10 years. So that's a statement of fact. And again, we're using this prediction here, right? The prediction model as a question of fact. But then you can, of course, surround this statement with facts, copious amounts of facts, more than likely from scientists all over the place that say it's a matter of time. So here's how I would lay that out. California, point 1 is California is long overdue for a major earthquake, and that in that case there, your subpoints would probably establish that earthquakes have happened in the past and that there are numerous facts suggesting that another one is imminent. Second point here, many geological signs indicate that a major earthquake may happen soon. And of course, the third one, experts agree that an earthquake of 9.0 or above could strike California any day. Now, obviously, this is kind of appropriate because recently California was rocked by a few earthquakes. Questions of value deal with worth, rightness, or ideas of idea or action. The speech must justify a claim or position. For example, what's the best movie of all time, right? I have my thoughts on that. I'm sure you do as well. How do you justify that then, all right? So this is a question of value, which it's kind of fun, makes it more lighthearted potentially. Or you can take a more serious approach. Is solitary confinement morally justifiable? Here's an example of a question of value. The central idea could be capital punishment violates both the Bible and the U.S. Constitution for 2 reasons. Here are the 2 reasons. Capital punishment violates the biblical commandment, thou shalt not kill, and then of course you'd have supporting points underneath that, facts and counter arguments. And then the second one here is capital punishment violates the constitutional ban on cruel and unusual punishment. And then of course beneath that second main point would be facts, counter arguments, etc. Throughout, of course, all of these you want transitions as well. So, and the last one here is kind of questions of policy. Another way to think about this: whether or not a course of action should be taken. Again, you see this happening a lot in politics. Policy is a specific course of action to take. For example, why to buy a laptop, which movie to see, or what do you do on spring break? What should you do? Here's a more serious question you could use: should the Electoral College be abolished? Now, obviously, after the last election, that's an interesting topic to think about, given that our current president won the Electoral College but lost to the popular vote. Here's an example of problem-solution order. Okay, it's a method of organizing persuasive speeches in which the first main point deals with the existence of a problem, and the second main point presents a solution to the problem. This is what I think you guys should use for your speech, by the way. I think this is probably the easiest way. It's the problem solution, or the problem cause solution is another way to think about this too. So problem solution is main point 1. Let's use this as an example. The spread of phony pharmaceuticals is a serious problem. Okay, that's a statement. And what your challenge here is to prove that this is a problem that needs to be addressed. So that's your persuasion. So here's main point 1, and then of course all the facts. Phony pharmaceuticals are one of the most profitable areas of the criminal activity in the world. So showing facts and figures that suggest that a lot of criminal activity happens around phony pharmaceuticals. In other words, fake pharma. Spread of phony pharmaceuticals in producing serious health risks in the U.S. is a second point there. And then, of course, the main point: solving the problem to phony pharmaceuticals requires action by the federal government. So Congress should pass legislation, and experts believe that such legislation will go a long way towards solving the problem. Again, throughout, you're looking for ways to support this with facts and figures. A variant of this, problem cause solution, right? Main 1 explains the problem, why it's significant. Point 2 analyzes the causes for the problem and why the problem exists. And then the main point 3 presents a realistic workable solution to the problem and or causes. Here's an example. Here's the central idea for problem cause solution. Childhood obesity is a serious problem that can be controlled by the changes in diet and exercise. Okay, good topic, good central idea. Here are the 3 points that you could use around that using the problem cause solution way of organizing your speech. Childhood obesity is a major problem in the U.S. Second point is there are 2 major causes to increase childhood obesity, and of course that probably is likely fast food and something else. And then finally, solving the problem requires dealing with both causes. So identifying this in a problem cause solution way is a very solid framework. Last thing I want to share with you guys here with regard to types is something called Monroe's motivated sequence, developed in the 30s by Alan Monroe. It's tailor-made for policy speeches that seek immediate action. So these are kind of cool. And actually, you see this a lot in advertising. I'm going to show you an example of an ad starring my favorite singer, Justin Bieber, in a second here. But it's a process, right? So there's 5 steps. So the first one is attention, gaining attention, right? So you want to have that opening statement that grabs the attention of the audience, followed by establishing a need. So showing that they need something. For example, in this case, with Justin Bieber, we're going to show him having a face full of pimples and then getting rid of it with a product. So advertising uses Monroe's motivated sequence quite a bit for these infomercials. So the need, establishing need. Then, of course, showing satisfaction. There's a solution, and having a viable solution to the problem is the point 3, and that's the step 3 in the process for Monroe's. And then, of course, visualizing success here. This is where visuals come in. And in this case here, we're going to show Justin Bieber before and after pictures of happy customers. And then finally, taking action. How do you get involved? What can you do? And calls to action and telling them how to do that. Okay, so let's take a look at this here.
Hey guys, Justin Bieber here. There are some things that just come with being a teenager. Feet grow like crazy. I can't stop that. The hormones kick in. I don't want to stop that. And then there's zits. I can stop that. That's why I use Proactive. Because there's no way I'm going to let a bunch of zits get in my way.
Want acne out of your life? Join Justin. Use Proactive and get control over those zits.
I held the mic up to my chin a lot, so I was starting to get acne on my chin, and Proactive definitely helped out a lot.
Proactive is an easy 3-step system that works for all ages, all skin types.
I used to think that Proactive was only for the hardcore cases. Guess what? It's also just right for kids like me. It's totally easy. It's like 1, 2, 3, done. So you don't have to worry about it anymore. It's pretty chill.
Stop worrying about your skin. Order Proactive now and we'll send you our 3-step system for only $19.95. That's just $19.95 to keep those breakouts away.
I started using Proactive after all of the acne treatments I've tried. It smooths my skin and it just changed my face forever.
Proactive is America's #1 acne system. Created by 2 leading dermatologists, it's faster and gentler than ever before. See for yourself.
It's awesome. I love Proactive. It doesn't take much time out of your day to make your face look crystal clear.
And when you order Proactive now, you'll get our refining mask absolutely free. It zeroes in on stubborn zits and clears them up fast.
I feel like that is my secret weapon. If I feel one coming on, I can stop it right away. It's completely gone. It's amazing.
And the mask is yours free for guaranteed clear skin.
Being a teenager is hard enough. Why make things harder? Proactive will get those zits off your face and keep them off. So what are you waiting for? Be proactive.
Okay, so that was Justin Bieber and a good example of Monroe's motivated sequence. That's another option for you guys, I would say. But I would say just honestly, if I had my druthers, I'd say just stick with problem solution or problem cause solution. That's the easiest, most effective way for you guys to do that. But I wanted you to know there are other ways to approach this as well. And if you want to do the Monroe's motivated sequence as a way of creating your outline and then, of course, executing your speech, go for it. All right, so let's quickly talk about persuasive technique because that's an important part of this. And obviously, this joke here, I've hired this musician to play a sad melody while I give you a sob story why I didn't do my homework. It's actually quite effective. Is maybe overkill there, but again, part of this whole thing is facts and emotional sort of play. So let's talk about that. Something called a rhetorical triangle. Now, what you really want to do, if I told you anything, really, just like equal balance of each of these 3 here: ethos, pathos, and logos. Right? Too much pathos rather, without enough logos, and your speech lacks punch. Right? Versus too much logos and not enough pathos lacks passion. Ethos, as we know, is kind of your credibility, which we'll talk about, right? But equal balances of ethos, your credibility, pathos, the emotional appeals, and of course the facts and figures. So types of credibility: initial, before the speech; derived, produced during the speech; and terminal, end of the speech. So you come in with some credibility, right? And you'll tell them maybe you've got some experience snowboarding, right? Let's say snowboarding is your topic, and you want to say snowboarding is better than downhill skiing, and you want to provide points for that, right? Maybe you're a snowboard instructor, maybe you're just really good at snowboarding. Okay, so you'll tell them that. And then during the middle of the speech, you're going to demonstrate that you know what you're talking about through your speech. So you'll get what's called derived credibility through the speech. And of course, at the end of your speech, finishing strong, will again only build on your credibility. So the different types of credibility. Enhancing that, all right, explain your competence, establish common ground. So in other words, you want to say, if it's a younger audience, which you'll have here, again, using the snowboarding example, lots of folks have probably had a chance to go skiing or snowboarding. Your younger audience probably has more experience with snowboarding, so you're in good company there. And then finally, speak expressly and with conviction. If you really are passionate about snowboarding as a sport versus downhill skiing, certainly make sure you do that, okay? Let's talk about evidence, all right? So that's supporting material to prove or disprove something, okay? So here's some different tips for that. Use specific evidence, facts that astound and are unequivocal. So in other words, find facts that really are hard to overcome. And there's bunches out there, but research will be the key there. Using novel evidence is also quite cool. Now, we can all card out stuff we've seen millions of times before, versus if you do your research and you find something that's unique and largely unknown and still has that wow factor. That's really speech gold, I would say. Use credible evidence, right? We know all about fake news, and there's lots of stuff out there right now that are built on half-truths, and so you want to do your homework there, and I will be flagging bad evidence. So you want to make sure your sources are up to snuff. And of course, make clear point of evidence. Make sure your listeners understand the point you're trying to make. Okay, so that's sometimes hard when using lots of facts and figures. So keep it simple. So pathos, we know that, right? That's obviously the emotional appeal. We want to use emotional language, develop vivid examples, and speak sincerely and with conviction. These are all examples of how to appeal to the emotion. Some examples from my world, advertising. I like this ad a lot, even though it really twists me up a little bit. Who would you rather see live? Which obviously is kind of a thumb in the nose for folks who are pro animal rights. So I guess this is rather controversial, right? Keyword there, rather. But again, a simple way of kind of creating an emotional appeal. Emotional appeals make appropriate to a topic. So you want to make sure that you do that and don't substitute wholly for evidence. So you got to have a good balance between the emotional appeal and the evidence that you present. So again, here we go. Rhetorical triangle is ethos, pathos, and logos. Make sure you have a good balance of each of those. Do your research. And then I'm going to share with you guys a couple different examples here. I'll put links to this in the Canvas site along with this video. So here's one here on nap time, which I think is really good. A student and the main points, taking naps and the benefits of that. And then this one here as well, being a hero, I found on YouTube as well. I wanted to share with you. A student gave a speech as well, which is rather clever. Throughout the way here, you want to be clever, and I would say, again, the key thing for you guys to think about is how you stitch this together, right, once you got your main points. Do a better job, if you can, of making those connectives or those transitions from point 1 to point 2 to point 3, and really have a strong opening and a strong close, and you guys will do great. So obviously, this is a lot of information to take in, but it's a good start. If you have any questions, always, please reach out to me via text or email. I do my level-headed best to get back to you guys in due time. You have some time here. Make sure you read the materials and get started on that speech. Good luck. We'll talk to you guys soon.